Welcome to part 13, in our tutorial series on how to develop a Contras-like game, with free visual game engine Gdevelop. In this video, we're going to implement a new enemy that is seen a lot in the Contra games, the turret, with its main mechanics about finding the player when in range, rotating toward him, and once facing it, start to shoot rounds of fire. Also, following the request from one of our community members, we are going to modify the weapon behavior to include AMNOs, which will cause the player to fall back to the default weapon when finishing the AMNO for the current weapon. For this video, and following some complaints about the frame rate, we are shifting the recording tool to OBS Studio, which is a more sophisticated and powerful screen recording software, so we hope to be able to achieve a more fluid viewing experience. We have also upgraded Gdevelop 5 to its last beta, version 103. We are referencing it, in case you see some of the screens different from yours, and also, because we have been suffering some problems that we think could be bugs associated with the new version. Some examples of which could be, the game view crashing several times forcing us to close and reopen it, or the game not starting to run. We have also noted that the engine is consuming higher CPU resources. Apart from that, the experience with the new version has been very positive, with some of the layouts for the object behaviors and the store, and with more tutorials and examples to learn from. If you have not yet downloaded and updated it, we highly recommend it. But things being said, let's start our tutorial, as always, by taking a look at what we have done up to now. So, we have our new level art design in place. We can pick up a new gun and shoot with new powers, with the character sprite taking a new visual reference to new animations and new sprites. Let's start implementing the new enemy. For that, let's create a new sprite object that we will be naming as turret enemy. Click on the Add Animation button, and then click on the add sign to add a new sprite. We are going to use a turret sprite that we have found on the internet, that belongs to a very good set of tank sprites created by Itch.io's user Rageword. Once we have imported it, we need to edit it in Piskel and rotate it to the right direction. By default, Gdevelop angles start with the 0 angle being oriented to the right. Our turret is looking upwards, so, to make the visual reference the same as the Gdevelop angles, without having to take into consideration the initial angle, it is best to rotate it as to be pointing horizontally to the right. For that, in the right menu, you have a button with a rotation icon. If you click on it, you will be rotating your sprite. You can fine-tune the rotation by pressing at the same time some of the keys hinted at by Piskel. Save and exit Piskel. Now, click on the Edit Points button. Let's move the origin position to the center of the sprite, as we want the rotation to be focused on the sprite center. Let's add a new point 2, that we will be using to fire the bullets from. So, click the plus sign, and name it Firebullet. Move the cross in the top left corner, as to be on the turret barrel. You can fine-tune the position by manipulating directly the coordinates. Click close to exit and then click apply to exit the object creation window. Now, let's drag the turret to the screen outside of the level already drawn, to make it more easily selectable. Click on it and change its layer in the left pane to game. Drag it to the final position you want it to be. In our case, and for testing purposes, we're going to place it right below the spawning point of the player. We will be managing its events from an external event sheet. So, click on the Project Manager button on the left top menu. And then click on the External Events option plus sign to add a new external event. Click on the three dots, or right-click on the new event sheet and rename it to turret enemy. Go back to the main game event sheet and scroll down to the bottom of the events. Click on the Add New Link from the Add button in the top right bar. Click on the new link and select from the list shown, the new event sheet that we have just created. Click on the arrow next to the link and it will open the new event sheet. When prompted to link the event sheet to a scene, choose any of the scenes you want, it doesn't have any impact for our purposes. In our case, we are going to choose our game scene. Before starting to code the turret behavior, we will need to add some object variables to allow us to control correctly the new enemy. So, go back to the game view, and from the objects pane, right-click on the turret and then edit object variables. Add the following variables and default values. Player in range with value 0. This will tell the turret if the player is in range, value 1, or not, value 0. Fire rate with value 1. This will tell the turret how fast it can shoot at the player. So, in this case, a bullet per second. Count shots with value 0. This will hold how many shots have been fired by the turret in the current round of fire. Yes, we are going to implement rounds. We don't want a turret constantly shooting at us, but rather to use rounds of shots with some pauses in between. So, the next variable will be fire rounds with the initial value of 5, meaning that the turret will fire 5 times before pausing during the next variable duration. Interval between rounds with the value of 5, will set 5 seconds of pause between rounds. And finally, turret range will hold how far away will the turret be able to detect and shoot at the player. In this case, we are setting the value to 2000 pixels. Click Apply to close and let's go back to the turret enemy event sheet to start coding the overall behavior. The first thing that we must do is to detect the player. So, create a new event. For the condition, let's select the turret object, and in the condition list, the option distance between objects. In the object field, select the physic player and in the distance, let's use the turret range variable that we have created in the turret object. So, type in turret variable turret range. Click OK to close. For the action, select the turret object. In the action list, select the option Modify a variable of an object. In the right pane, in the field variable, select the player in range. In modification sign, choose Set to, and in the value, type 1. Click OK to close. To avoid doing this action every frame, while the player is inside the range of the turret, and thus saving some CPU, let's add to the event the condition player in range is different than 1. Let's go back to the actions and add a new action. For the object, select the turret. In the search box, type reset and select from the actions list the option start or reset a timer. In the timer name field, type fire rate timer. This is the time to control the time between different shots. Let's copy the first condition where we are checking the distance to the player. Add a new event, and in the condition paste the condition that we have just copied. Right-click on it, and from the menu select the option Invert Condition. This will make Gdevelop testing the distances above the turret range. Let's copy the action where we are setting the player in range to 1 and paste it in the actions of the event we just created. Click on the value 1 and replace it with 0. We are saying that when the player is further away than the turret range, to reset the value of the variable player in range to 0. Also, if the player is no longer in range, let's reset and pause the fire rate timer, by adding two new actions associated with the turret object with the actions reset and pause timer. Let's add a new event, and in the condition let's check if the turret variable player in range is equal to 1. We will leave the action empty for now. We will come back to it after we create the new sub-event and its condition. In the condition of the sub-event, let's check if the turret is facing the player because we don't want it to shoot while not facing the player. For this, select the turret object, and then in the search box type angle. In the condition list, choose the option an object is turned toward another. In the right panel, in the object field, choose physic player. And in the angle of tolerance, let's type 10. This will make the turret to have a margin of detection of 10 degrees to validate that it is facing the player. The bigger the number, the less precise the turret will be, and inversely the more precise it will be. We have tried with 0, but it doesn't work correctly, so it is best to work with angles around 5 to 20 degrees. Click OK to close. For the turret to be facing the player, we need to rotate it. For that, in the above event where we check if the player is in range, let's add an action. Select the turret, and then in the search box type rotate. From the list, select the action rotate toward position. In the right pane, in the field X position, let's add the physic player X. Copy the instruction and paste it in the field Y position, replacing the X for a Y. In the angular speed, let's type in 100. This is the speed at which the turret will rotate toward the player. Click OK to close. Now, in the sub-event action, add a new action for the turret object. And in the actions list, select the option Unpause Time. On the timer name field, type in Fire Rate Timer. This will make our turret to start counting the time between shots and get ready to fire at the player. Right-click in the sub-event, and choose the option Add New Sub-Event, where we are going to check how many bullets have been fired by the turret with the current round. So, in the condition, select the turret object, in the conditions list, select the option Value of an object variable. In the variable name, choose the variable count shots. In the modification sign, less than. And in the value type turret variable fire round to compare the number of bullets shot against the round limit. Click OK to close. If we are still with the limits, then we can still shoot. So, add a new sub-event. On the condition, select the turret object. And on the conditions list value of an object variable. In the modification sign, choose less or equal than. On the value to compare, Type the turret object timer elapsed time fire round timer. Click OK to close. Where are we comparing the timer like this? In the different tutorials that we have been making, we have seen that directly comparing the value of the timer with the value of a variable was giving us a lot of problems. In some cases, it was correctly compared, while in others not. With this instruction, it always works without any problems. Let's add a new condition trigger once, to make sure that it will only be played once. Right-click on the event and choose Add Event below. We are not yet adding it, but it is just to have aligned correctly with the one that we have just created for later. Right-click again on the event, and this time choose the option Add Sub-Event. Let the condition empty and let's add the action. Choose the turret object. On the action search box type Reset, and choose from the action list the start or reset time. In the timer's name type Fire Rate Timer. Click OK to close. Let's create now the bullets. Click Add Action and select the bullet enemy object. In the search box, type Create. Select the Create object from the list. In the X position field type Turret Points Fire Bullet. Copy the instruction and paste it in the Y position field. Replace the X with a Y. In the Layer field, select the game layer. Click OK to close. Click again in Add Action and select the bullet enemy. In the search box type Add, and select the option Add Force Angle. In the right pane, in the Angle field, type Turret Angle. This will copy the current angle the turret is rotated to. In the Speed field type in 200. We will be able to adjust later on if needed. Click OK to close. Finally, let's add a new action. Select the turret object and in the search box type Variable. Choose the option Modify a variable of an object. In the Variable field, choose Count Shots. In the modification sign, add and in the value, type 1. Click OK to close. Right-click on the events condition where we are testing the value of count shots to fire round and select the option Copy. Go to the event that we have created after the set of actions that creates and moves the bullets and paste it in the condition. Click on the less than comparison and select the greater or equal to. Drag it to be directly below the bullet creation event. In the actions, choose the turret object and then select the reset or start timer action. In the timer's name field, type Fire Round Timer. This will make the timer that counts the time between rounds to start counting and blocking the turret from firing immediately. Let's run what we currently have to check the code. OK, as soon as the player gets in the range, the turret rotates towards him and follows him as to face it. But it doesn't fire. We must have some mistake in the events. Let's go back and check it. OK, this is because we did not check the fire rate timer, but the fire round timer. So, let's modify the interval between rounds variable to fire rate. And then the timer from fire round times to fire rate timer. Let's run again. And now, we can see that the turret is firing, but the bullets are not moving toward the player. They are like standing in the same place where they are spawned. This is certainly something related to the add force. Let's check the code again. Yes. In the add force action, we are adding an instant force, when it should be a permanent force. Change it. Let's run again the game. And now the turret is correctly firing at the player, but without taking into consideration the rounds. Let's finish coding the behavior. For that, let's add a new event below the event where we are testing the count shots. Copy its condition by right-clicking and select the copy option. Paste it in the new event and invert it, by right-clicking on it, and choosing the invert condition option. Add another condition. Choose the turret object, and in the condition search box, type variable. Choose the value of an object variable, and in the variable field, select the interval between rounds variable. In the sign of the text field, choose the less than option, and in the value to compare, type turret object time elapsed time fire round timer. Let's add an action, to reset the turret variable count shots back to 0. Let's run the game. And we can see that our turret is now firing at us with the round behavior. Let's fine-tune the speed for the bullets to 500. Let's add also the trails to the bullets. For that, let's copy-paste the create bullet enemy action. And replace the bullet enemy with bullet trail object. Let's replicate the operation to the add force action. In this case, reduce the speed of the force to 400, to make the trail following the bullet. And it runs correctly. Time to take into consideration your requests. Let's implement the AMNO limit. For that, let's go back to the game scene view. Let's select our gun Sprite 1. Right-click on it in the Objects pane, and then choose the option Edit Object Variables. Add a new variable named AMNO. We will set the number of ammunitions to 10. Now, let's choose our gun object and replicate the same action to add a new variable. In this case, we will set the default value to 0. Now, let's go to the game main event sheet and look for the events associated with the gun pickup that we have implemented in the previous video. Add a new action associated with the gun object. Select the modify variable of an object, and in the variable field choose the AMNO. In the modification sign, choose the option set to, and in the value type gun sprite 1 variable AMNO. This will get the value of AMNO in the new gun that we are picking, into the gun object and will allow us to consider it in the shooting events. Now, scroll up to the events where we are shooting, and add a new action to the event where we are checking if it is the new weapon that is shooting. Add a new action, associated with the gun object. In the actions list, choose modify variable of an object, and in the variable field choose the AMNO. In the modification sign, choose the subtract, and in the value type 1. This will decrease with each shot, our AMNO by 1. So, we need now, to see when we are left out of ammunitions and revert it to the default weapon. For this, let's add a new event. In the condition, select the gun object and check the variable AMNO to be less or equal than 0. For the action, let's add an action, associated with the physic player, where we are going to set the variable weapon back to 0. Let's try it. Well, the turret doesn't allow us to test it. We need to move it out of the way. Well, we can see that the game scene view has crashed. This is something that we have seen frequently since we have started to use beta 103. We have left this on purpose, in case you are getting the same problems. You can either restart the engine or close the scene view and then reopen it from the Project Manager menu. Let's move the turret a couple of pixels forward to allow the player to spawn and make some shots. Another problem that we are facing with this new version, is that, when trying to run the game, we are left several times, with a black screen and the game doesn't start. In some cases, it is possible to do after a couple of tries, in other cases you need to restart the engine. So, let's restart the engine. Let's reopen the different views on the game and events. Let's run the game. We can pick up the gun. We can shoot the new shots. And, after 10 shots, the gun is reverted to the default gun and we start to shoot again single bullets rounds. It is working correctly. Let's close for now. In the next video, we're going to take this new behavior and try to apply it to another very common enemy in Contra which fires at you from different directions. Plus, any possible request from the community if there are any. We hope that you have liked this video. If it has been the case, consider subscribing, giving a like, and clicking on the notification button. If you have any questions, problems, or comments, don't hesitate in putting a comment and we will answer as fast as we could. See you in the next video, game developers.